What if Padme Amidala was a Sith Lord? That's what I want to explore today. I've thought about this one for a while, so let's get into it in just a moment. But folks, before we do, I am on a vacation right now. I have 3 videos scheduled, 2 new ones, and one of them will be a 2-parter that I recently did, just merged into one. But I'm just letting you know that I might not be able to get to comments as much as I'm on vacation, but I promise I still do see the comments, so I'll see what I can do. Thanks a ton for watching. Let's get right into it. On Naboo, a young girl was playing outside of a government building as her parents were finishing up a meeting with Senator Palpatine. The young girl was Padme Amidala, and as the meeting concluded, the Amidala parents showed their daughter to Senator Palpatine. And in this moment, Palpatine felt something. In the Force, this girl was surrounded by power that she did not know. Power he'd only truly felt once, and her heart was good. But he promised himself right now, he could turn her heart dark. He greeted the young girl, his mind already racing with the possibilities. He was training Darth Maul, and he was the apprentice of Darth Plagueis, but perhaps a secret apprentice would be good. He had never felt such untrained, raw power before. And Palpatine pulled the parents to the side, asking them if Padme had ever displayed any mysterious gifts or abilities. And the parents said that sometimes her reflexes were astounding. She could predict things before they happened once in a while. Palpatine put on a gentle smile and said that they should get a Jedi assessment for her. He said that he knows some Jedi, and even if they determine that she can be a Jedi, she does not have to go to the temple. It would simply provide clarity, Palpatine said in his cheery voice. The parents looked at each other and agreed it could be a good idea. It certainly couldn't hurt. And they told Palpatine that they would be waiting for the Jedi inside their home. Palpatine said that this was excellent, and said goodbye to them. It was time to put together his plan. A few days later, Palpatine told the parents that the Jedi were on their way, and of course this was not true. Instead, Palpatine hired bounty hunters to fly a stolen Republic ship to their home, disguised as Jedi. As Palpatine watched the ship approach the home, he reached out to young Padme in the Force. Padme Amidala was sitting in her home when she felt something, like someone was calling to her. She didn't understand the Force or know that she had it. She just thought this was natural, and so she followed this feeling, this calling outside of her home. She walked outside and ran down her stairs to the lake, but no one was there. This was strange, but she knew she should probably get home. The Jedi were coming, and she was excited to meet them. She'd only heard great things about the Jedi after all. But as Padme turned around, she was struck with horror. She watched the Jedi ship crash directly into her home, and a loud explosion was met with flames engulfing the entire thing. Padme was stunned, but she took off running for the house as fast as she could. Darth Sidious watched from behind a tree as Padme ran toward her home. Moments ago, Sidious had drawn her out of her home with the Force, and moments later he pulled the Jedi ship directly into the house with the Force. Now, he switched from Sidious to Palpatine and caught Padme before she could run into the fire, hugging her and telling her it would all be alright. Padme cried into Palpatine's arms. His embrace was warm and understanding, and that was exactly what the 10-year-old girl needed in this moment. After a bit, Palpatine got on a knee and looked her in the eyes. He said the Jedi did this to her parents for reasons that he did not know, and Palpatine felt the anger, the power that could be brought out from her, and Palpatine promised her that if she comes with him, she will someday be strong enough to fight any Jedi, to get revenge on them. Padme pushed away tears, not truly understanding what this meant, but she had nowhere else to go. So she nodded, and Palpatine took her as his daughter and his future apprentice. 5 years later, Darth Sidious watched his secret Sith base on Naboo as Padme Amidala, now 15 years old, cut down wave after wave of training battle droids, along with Magna Guards, executing Jedi lightsaber forms as well as any Jedi her age. She'd only been training for about 4 years, as Sidious slowly introduced her to the dark side of the Force, and she was progressing at an extremely impressive rate. Things were working out in their favor across the galaxy as well. Darth Plagueis was dead. Darth Maul was dead. Count Dooku, now Darth Tyrannus, would serve as an excellent puppet, and in time, Padme would be his one true apprentice. And right now, her abilities in the Force were being kept hidden from the galaxy. Much like Palpatine, As she rose through the ranks of politics, she had to keep her true identity as a Sith hidden. While Palpatine was Chancellor, Padme had become Queen of Naboo. Sympathy about her parents, along with influence from Chancellor Palpatine and Padme's own cunning political attitude, got her this position. She would use it to help start the eventual war. But she had been given a new assignment as well, one that would be worked on for the next decade until she was sure it had been completed. Monitor Anakin Skywalker, the supposed Jedi Chosen One, and get him to completely fall in love with her. It was obvious to Padme and Palpatine that this new Chosen One, found by the Jedi roughly a year ago, was already very intrigued by Padme, and she was to form a relationship with him, ultimately deciding whether Anakin will join them or if he has to die. And so, over the next 10 years or so, Padme continued to train with her master, Darth Sidious, as he worked with Dooku to create a clone army and plant the seeds for war. Padme was now 24 years old, and she'd mastered all the lightsaber forms of the Jedi. Sidious was confident she would be able to hold her own, even against some of the best of the Jedi Order. The two of them had spent countless hours diving deep into the dark side, and Padme thought of Sidious as a father and as a master. She learned to be just like him in the Force, mastering Force lightning, mastering the ability to hide her own Force abilities. She was extremely powerful, and had also become one of the most influential senators in the entire galaxy. All the while, she had slowly, but perfectly formed a relationship with Anakin Skywalker. She was leading him on, pretending to be in love, as Skywalker fell completely in love with her. Padme's assignment was simple: make Anakin fall in love with her for one purpose, to turn him to the dark side, or have an easy kill when he least expected it. But something she'd never expected to happen started to occur more every single month. Despite Padme's best efforts to pour hatred and anger at the Jedi, she found herself actually falling in love with Anakin. She knew that this was bad, and she tried constantly to push these feelings away, but she could not. Padme hated every single Jedi for what the Order did to her parents, killing them in an instant, without reason or perhaps even without purpose. But Anakin was different. Like her, Anakin began training around 10 years old. He was rather unstable. He felt like an outcast, and Padme understood what that was like. On the outside, it looked like she was very popular, but internally, she wasn't really allowed to have any friends with her missions as a Sith, and she really enjoyed having Anakin around. He didn't know it, but the two of them, while opposites, were very similar. Padme really enjoyed his company. But soon it was time to begin the Clone War. The clone army that Dooku had secretly put together, it was ready to go, and so the plan was put into place to force the Republic into war. Anakin had been assigned a mission to protect Senator Amidala from consistent assassinations, and they sat together in a field on Naboo. Padme looked at Anakin, knowing how quickly he would turn on her if he knew the truth, and it saddened her. But she owed everything to her master, her powers, her life, the revenge on the Jedi, all of it. So long as he could still teach her to destroy the Jedi for what they did, she would be loyal to her master. And so on this day, as Anakin and Padme sat together, they watched as an invasion of Naboo took place by the Separatists. Padme knew this was coming, and as the Separatist droids descended to occupy Naboo, a shuttle landed near Padme and Anakin. They both watched as Count Dooku descended down the ramp, followed by a squad of battle droids. He didn't know who Padme truly was. Dooku would always be one step behind her and Sidious, and today she had to put a show on, act like she was just a regular senator. And Dooku said that his assassination attempts on her were falling short, so he was here to do it himself. He ignited his lightsaber, and began to duel Skywalker as he tried to protect Padme. At this time, Dooku was much more powerful and experienced than Anakin, and would have beaten him rather easily, if it weren't for subtle interference for Padme. Every so often, she would silently, quickly, subtly use the Force to slow his movements enough to not be noticeable, but enough to give Anakin the opportunity to win. And eventually, as they dueled, Dooku was slow on a block, and Anakin was able to cut his hands off. As Anakin now stood, lightsabers crossed across Dooku's neck, Padme urged Anakin to kill him. Take out the Separatist leader before a war can begin. and Anakin killed Dooku, feeling the darkness around him as he executed Dooku from Padme's wishes. For Padme and Sidious, this was part of the plan. Dooku has played his part in starting the war. He was no longer needed. Instead, Grievous, Ventress, Sidious, and Padme would be able to guide the Separatist leaders. And, in turn, Anakin had dove into the dark side for the first time to kill Dooku. In a Senate meeting the next day, Padme floated her pod to the center and described what happened. Count Dooku and the Separatists invaded Naboo, and they were still there. Luckily, Dooku was killed by the Jedi, so the war should not take long. But as she spoke, a mysterious hologram appeared in the center of everything. It was a recording of Darth Sidious, planted by Palpatine to look like live footage, and this mysterious man, voice disguised much more than normal, said he would not rest until the Republic has fallen. He said Naboo is only the first step, and Dooku's sacrifice did nothing to prevent the war that is coming. And after seeing this, the Senate officially approved of the war effort. Within months, Jedi were on the front lines, fighting heavily against the Separatists, whose main leadership was never anywhere to be seen. For over a year, the war would go on. Padme would use her influence to make sure Anakin ended up in all of the worst battles, making him see the worst of the war, the worst of the Republic, the worst of the Jedi, and it hurt her to do this, deep down. Padme didn't love it, and during this time, she only fell more in love with him, and he fell more in love with her. Padme kept telling herself that it wasn't real, that she would feel nothing if he died, but she knew the truth. She couldn't bear to lose Anakin. And one day, as they sat together in Padme's apartment, Anakin walked in with a load of documents and data. Padme asked what it was all about, and Anakin told her that he was curious about something, and so he'd done his own research. Padme was cautiously intrigued by what this was about, and Anakin said he was researching the death of her parents. Padme and Anakin rarely talked about it, but Padme mentioned that it was from a ship crashing into the home, and this was strange that Anakin was doing this. From Padme's point of view, the Jedi had either clumsily lost control of their ship or crashed it on purpose, and now Anakin would find that all out for himself. But Anakin began reading the reports of the crash, reports that Palpatine had never shown to Padme. These reports described that there were no Jedi on board the Republic shuttle that crashed into her house. Instead, it was hired bounty hunters, and in their final moments, the reports showed that they called out to all the frequencies that they could. They were saying their ship was under some kind of pull to the ground. They had no control over it. Anakin looked up at her, saying perhaps it was the Sith that brought down her ship. Anakin said the first Sith seen in thousands of years, Maul, was on Naboo a few years earlier. Perhaps he had something to do with it. But Padme wasn't hearing a word Anakin was saying after he read the reports. This information had been kept hidden from Padme, and immediately she knew why. Sidious, her master, the man she looked at as her new father. Padme remembered that day that her parents died, how she ran to the house, and someone stopped her, the only person nearby. Sidious. It all made sense. He murdered her parents and took Padme for himself. Padme felt the anger, the hatred coursing through her as she realized the truth. She was afraid Anakin would feel the dark side in her, so she quickly ran to her speeder and took off to confront her master before Anakin could ask where she was going. But as Padme reached Palpatine's office building, she stopped. She felt her anger, and she took control of it. She realized she was acting irrationally. This would take patience. She would strike when the time was right, and now was not that time, and she had questions now. Were the Jedi truly the ones that were evil? Did the Jedi have anything to do with this? Was her entire training, her entire life as a Sith, a waste? Did she need to deny her love for Anakin any longer? She was confused, and so she flew back to the apartment and apologized to Anakin for leaving like that. She just needed a moment to clear her head. Around a week later, as Padme continued to ponder her options, she was assigned on a diplomatic mission to Monolist with Anakin to negotiate with Sand and other members of the banking clan. The two of them were escorted through a building, and something seemed off. Citizens seemed to be leaving the main building, as if a quiet evacuation was ordered, and as Padme and Anakin entered a room, the door was shut behind them, and 6 Magna Guards appeared from each corner. Anakin ignited his lightsaber and told Padme to hide while he handles this. Padme listened, and she watched as Anakin cut down the guards, one by one, noting how she would have done it differently. And she was prepared to go up to Anakin as he cut down the final guard, but something else was still off. She looked up to the ceiling now to see General Grievous. He was crawling around, attempting to sneak an assassination attempt on Anakin, and Padme saw him suddenly jump to the ground, lightsabers ignited in the air, and Padme realized Anakin would not be able to turn around in time. And so she had to make a split-second decision. Padme reached her hand out, grabbing Grievous with the Force, freezing him in the air, right behind Anakin. And now Anakin turned, seeing Grievous frozen, and seeing Padme hold out her hand, behind the droid general. Anakin had every emotion running through his mind, but Padme yelled at him to kill Grievous, and so Anakin stabbed Grievous through the heart, killing him, then looked to Padme. She'd allowed herself now to be felt in the Force in order to save Anakin, and Anakin could feel the dark side that surrounded her, the years of training, becoming one with the darkness. It was unmistakable. Anakin took steps backwards, then ignited his lightsaber. Tears were in his eyes as he yelled at her, calling her a traitor and a Sith. How could she do this? But Padme remained comforting, holding out her hands as she approached him, saying it was all a misunderstanding. And eventually, Anakin let his guard down, and Padme took the opportunity to knock him unconscious with a Force push. It pained her to do it, but she was still loyal to the ultimate cause of ruling the galaxy. At least she thought. Was she? She wasn't sure, but she picked Anakin up and moved like a blur to get back to their ship, and she took off for the secret lair on Naboo, telling her master, Darth Sidious, that Anakin had found out who she was. It was time for Anakin to make a choice, Sidious said. Join them or die. And Padme ended the call, wondering why she was doing this, why she was bringing Anakin to her master. It was like she was just trained to do it, and she couldn't stop herself, even when she knew the truth about Sidious. And she wondered, in the moment of truth, what would she do? Anakin eventually awoke in some sort of ray shield prison. As his eyes and mind cleared, he remembered General Grievous, held up by the Force, by Padme. And Anakin remembered it all now, how she felt the darkness in her, a darkness that could only be in a Sith. And a door opened as Padme walked in, followed closely by, and it couldn't be, Chancellor Palpatine. Two of Anakin's closest friends, his love and his mentor, stood in front of him now, and Palpatine looked to Padme as she knelt in front of him, saying she did well in bringing Anakin here. Suddenly, a dozen of Palpatine's red guards walked in, surrounding Padme and Anakin. Padme looked around confused, as Palpatine began to speak again. He said he has made an executive decision. Skywalker must die. He applauded Padme for the years of manipulation. It was good practice they could continue to use on others. But he said Anakin is a lost cause. Sidious said he had fears if this continued that Padme may develop a real connection to him. So, Sidious instructed Padme to strike down Anakin, and Anakin was dropped from the restraints, now on his knees in front of Padme. Sidious spoke, saying, "My worthy apprentice, daughter of darkness, complete your training and fulfill your destiny." Anakin looked up at Padme and tried to move, but he was stuck in place by Sidious. And Sidious began to laugh, mocking Anakin for thinking he could turn Padme to his side in this moment. Sidious said that he could feel the anger inside of Padme, the hatred inside of her centered on one single person. Sidious took a deep breath, basking in the dark side that surrounded his apprentice, the darkness that he created, and he told her to do it. But not a moment later, a lightsaber went straight through Sidious's heart. The last words he ever heard were from Padme as she said, "This is for my parents." And Sidious fell, understanding now that the focused hatred was on him, not Anakin. As Sidious died, Anakin was freed from his grip. For a moment that felt like an eternity, Anakin understood that Padme truly loved him. Though it may have started as some ultimate Sith plan, their love had become real. Padme was given an opportunity to choose between a life of power next to Sidious, with the Jedi dead underneath her, or choose Anakin. She realized that it was Sidious who took everything from her, not the Jedi, not Anakin. and Padme handed Anakin his lightsaber as the 12 red guards attacked them. The first royal guard lunged at Padme, but she blocked the attack, her blade meeting the guard's weapon with a shower of sparks. Then she blasted him with force lightning through his helmet. Meanwhile, Anakin swiftly moved to engage 2 guards at once, his lightsaber a blur as he expertly countered their strikes, cutting them both in half with a single swing. Padme's agility was unbelievable, as she somersaulted over the top of the guards, landing gracefully behind them, striking down 2 with blows the guards had no chance of blocking. Anakin continued on, swinging at another group of guards with a series of powerful strikes. He disarmed them and used a strong push to throw them against the wall, killing them from the impact. The room echoed with the clash of sabers against the guards' weapons as Padme and Anakin fought back to back now, their movements matching each other nicely. Padme anticipating the guards' moves before they made them, cutting down another. Anakin moving forward, stabbing another. But then, Anakin found himself surrounded by 3 guards, their weapons whirling dangerously. And with a fierce yell, he touched the dark side, sending a powerful shockwave that sent the guards flying backwards, their weapons clattering to the ground as their armor shattered into their bodies. As the last guard fell, to a final swing from Padme, the 2 of them stood together, staring at each other. All of Padme's training, years of serving the dark side, told her to kill Anakin here and now, take Sidious's place as the Sith leader, take the galaxy for herself. And Anakin put away his lightsaber. He was giving her a choice: kill him or be with him. Padme remembered her parents, killed by the Sith, and she chose to honor them. She put away her own lightsaber and hugged Anakin. They would go on to leave Naboo together, and Padme would go on to shut down all of the droids. Without Grievous, Sidious, Padme, or the droids, the Separatist leaders would go on to surrender. Palpatine had mysteriously disappeared, and eventually a new Chancellor would be elected, but Anakin and Padme would not stay to find out who it was. Anakin left the Jedi Order, which was disappointing to Obi-Wan and his Padawan Ahsoka, who would become Obi-Wan's Padawan, and Anakin didn't specify exactly why he was leaving the Order, but he took off with Padme to get away from it all, and focus on what the 2 of them want with each other in the future. Power? Just love with each other? They weren't sure, but they would find out eventually. And folks, that's our story today. There's potential for a part 2 if we want to do that. If this video does well, I'll definitely consider it, but not going to be for a minute as I've scheduled this before I go on a vacation. Once again, thanks a ton for watching. Please leave a like, leave a comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you in the next video.